Welcome to our 7th session for the Commission to study the Division of Rehabilitation Services. I want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. This will be our final session of the Commission's meeting, so we have a number of things we're going to get through. We're going to start off, I'll be starting off, and then in a few minutes, Superintendent Chowdhury will be joining us as well. So, why don't we kind of go ahead and get started, and we'll just kind of review a lot of these first slides you all have seen already, but we'll just kind of go through them real quick. Again, the Maryland General Assembly passed House Bill 660 in the spring of 2022. That bill requires that there be a commission study for the Division of Rehabilitation Services. The commission shall meet at least 5 times and discuss the 10 different topics. After the commission has evaluated the recommendations, we have to submit a report. We submitted a report on December 15th of 2022, and our final report is due March 15th, 2023. Here are our 10 topics that we have discussed or have discussed. Next. Today we're going to be continuing our discussion on topics 7, which is whether or not the Division of Rehabilitation Services should continue to be a division of the State Department of Education or transfer to another state agency. Topic 8, if the Commission determines that the Division of Rehabilitation Services should continue to be a division of the State Department of Education, whether or not the Division Rehabilitation Service should have a governing board separate from the State Board of Education. And then our final topic is going to be topic 10, which is any other improvement to the Division of Rehabilitation Services programs and services the Commission appears appropriate. So we're going to recap a little bit of a history here. Okay, Jen, again, for sort of the organizational structure and so forth, the Division of Rehabilitation Service was established in 1929 as a division of the Maryland State Department of Education. The Maryland State Department of Education is overseen by the State Board of Education. The State Board has 14 members that are appointed by the governor and approved by the Senate, and the state superintendent is appointed by the State Board. The division has a State Rehabilitation Council. It is appointed by the governor to review, analyze, and advise on the VR's agency's overall performance. And in addition, the Division of Rehabilitation Services is responsible for, in addition to the VR program, the Disability Determination Service, the Independent Living Older Blind program, the Independent Living program, and the Randolph-Shepard program. Just again, a little recap of the individuals that we serve. Those individuals that have a diagnosis of cognitive disabilities is our largest population, standing at 8,475. Other mental disabilities stands at 6,805. Psychosocial at 5,028. Individuals who are deaf, 1,531. Individuals who are blind, deafblind, or low vision at 1,530. Individuals with communicated disabilities, 327, and either physical or orthopedic at 4,565. The division is part of its workload. We have a very large transitioning workload. In total of our active workload, we have 10,838 individuals who are between the ages of 14 and 25. Of that, 5,777 are in pre-employment transitioning programs. Another 5,061 are in the vocational program. Students and youth with disabilities, it represents 53% of the DORS current active caseload. Of the people who are on the waiting list currently, we have 2,690. Of those individuals, 1,109 are between the ages of 14 and 25. This is just a brief overview of our DORS wait list from 2017 through February of 2023. Of that, the individuals who are on our wait list, students and youth with disability, 41% of those individuals meet that criteria. Okay. Dr. Wells. So we're going to get into some of the current initiatives. Okay, next slide.
Good afternoon. My name is Krishna Tulur. I'm Deputy State Superintendent for Operations, and it's my pleasure to share some of these initiatives that MSDE and DORS implement as one state agency. DORS is a part of MSDE, and the operations are structured to support the division as such. I'm going to specifically talk about the counselor vacancies. The vocational rehabilitation services counselors, they are the big part of DORS operations and form the largest part of the division's employees. In June 30, that's just about 10 months ago, we had 40 counselor and supervisory vacancies in the vocational rehabilitation program, and about 59 claims examiner vacancies in the DDS side. In fall of 2021, under Superintendent Chowdhury's leadership, MSDE and as a whole, with leaders from Human Resources, Finance, Mr. Dennis, his team, we did a exhaustive and comprehensive study of the vocational rehabilitation classifications to identify the reasons for the vacancies or the turnover, and we found that there is a huge salary disparity between the counselors and examiners here in Maryland and their counterparts in the neighboring jurisdiction as well as across the nation. So MSDE submitted a fiscally responsible but competitive and a salary proposal with an intent to bring the compensation structure to be one of the best in the nation. And as of July 1st, 2022, the salaries as a result were increased from a little over $42,000 to $54,000, $54,665 to be precise. And as a result of the changes to the salary structure within the state of Maryland itself, the salary is now at little over $57,000. Existing staff in this job series, as a result, experienced close to 20% pay increase. As of this moment, we have 9 vacancies in the counselors and 1 supervisory vacancy in DORS. There are 7 examiner vacancies, but many of these positions are what we call the background verification process. So once that process is completed, some of these vacancies will be near or at 0. One of the things that MSD also did with the superintendent's guidance is we reached out to the congressional delegation here from the state of Maryland to work on and get some movement and traction to expedite the federal clearance process. And we saw some results as a result of that as well. Justin?
Okay. So as a part of that work, one of the other current initiatives that the department is engaged in is, recognizing that this will address vacancies and which will in turn impact screening and wait list and other initiatives. But waiting for that to happen is not necessarily an option. And so what the department did, again with the superintendent's leadership, is working with the University of Maryland, their CTCI, which is the University of Maryland Center for Transitioning and Career Innovation, to launch a 2-year pilot program modeled off of the fee-for-service model that that Wisconsin has been deploying in support of trying to do 2 things, to expedite screening and moving off the wait list, but also to pinpoint a finite price, a fee-for-service model to identify what the best practice is and the necessary resources required to scale and maintain that effort. And so as a part of this work, the department has issued a grant to the University of Maryland to conduct this study. And what the advantage of doing this study is not only do we get to learn about this, but we also, in the meantime, get them helping with doing this work, because the way that they're studying it is indeed by going through this process. And so as the program focuses on best approaches and giving University of Maryland discretion in terms of implementing this, knowing what the Wisconsin model is, but adapting and mapping that to the state of Maryland in our particular cases. They do have the opportunity to adjust and implement the best in practice for these approaches. So if you go to the next slide, oh, we're already there, perfect. The initial grant for this was $1.6 million. As the previous slide said, though, we did budget originally for the full $2 million for this. And the program is going well. And so what we're seeing with this is the department gets to benefit from additional FTEs from the University of Maryland who are working on this project. So we'll talk in a second about core services teams and what that looks like here internally to MSDE as headquarters operations supports DORS and this part of its work stream. But in addition to that, we get to leverage these positions at the University of Maryland while we're doing this, which also gives us a sense of timing, level of effort, et cetera, for how to continue moving this work forward. And so given this work, we have been able to reopen, for example, the waitlist for the first time, the Category 2 waitlist for that first time since 2017? Yeah, so it's already yielding promising results. But again, that's just one component of our headquarters operational support. I'll turn it back over to my colleague Krishna, who will talk about what that core services support looks like internally as well.
Absolutely, thank you, Justin. As we briefly shared at the beginning of this chapter, the MSD and DORS functions as one organization. And the way this is accomplished by this operational structure that's been established in MSDE under superintendent's guidelines and guidance is what we call the core services teams. MSD Core Services teams, these are a team of professionals that work as one team to support a division and an office within the agency. So there is a core services team that supports DORS. This team has a talent partner for the human resource aspects and the human resource work, a business services partner for procurement and contracts, information technology partner, as the name suggests, for the IT support, and the planning and budget analysts. The purpose of this team is one, to support the division on the day-to-day operations, but also to move the work forward and function as a fail-safe to support the division in case there are times when something doesn't get done. So this team functions as that fail-safe. So the talent partners meet with the hiring managers and they regularly review the vacancies, provide update on recruitments for each vacancy, and identify the issues that need to be resolved. As we saw earlier, the vacancies that were reduced in the vocational rehabilitation series, the talent partner and their team worked very closely with Mr. Dennis and all the hiring managers in DORS to accomplish that. Similarly, the business service partners meet with the Director of Administration and Finance on a regular basis within the Division of Rehabilitation Service to discuss the current and the upcoming procurements.
And in a similar vein, the Core Services team planning and budget analysts likewise support Vincent and the whole finance team over at the Division of Rehabilitative Specialists, especially as we continue to look into our fiscal year 25 budget construction, right? So I know that we're all focused on 24 and the 24 budget bill right now, but as far as the department goes, we actually begin our fiscal year 25 planning now. So that work begins in earnest, and last year the department across all of its programs and divisions zero-based its budget, and that work was led by the Core Services planning and budget analysts who are working in conjunction with their program staff. And so that also includes our wraparound support of DORS.
Okay. Thank you, Justin. One of the other initiatives that we're going to be undertaking as a result of feedback that we've heard from both the commission itself as well as Parents Place of Maryland is the creation of a new office within the Division of Rehabilitation Services. It's going to be called the Office of Individual and Community Engagement that will report directly to this position as the state director. The role of this office is to actively engage and seek feedback on a continuous basis with various disability communities around the state. The office will have a dedicated staff whose sole focus is on this continuous engagement with the community and improve our overall communication and identify systematic issues that infect individuals or multiple communities. This office will also serve as our ombudsman, excuse me, my language on that one, for the VR program and the Independent Living Older Blind program when consumer issues arise. Currently, we have an individual who does it, but the individual is focused on about 3 or 4 other different jobs. And so this way we can have an individual who is really tasked with doing that. This individual will have, will be collecting data on DORS services and looking at ways for improvement, whether this be through policy adjustments, whether this be through training that is needed, or as clarification on information that we have provided. So they'll also look into conducting research on best practices that have been identified and improve our work to help improve our overall services. Okay. The other thing, community-based services. So we kind of want to bring you up to speed because we, again, are looking to make changes at DORS as a result of this. And so we just kind of want to give you some idea of what we've been up to and focusing more on community-based services. We're fortunate that a lot of this effort is being led by Mr. Evans, who's on the commission. But let me kind of give you an idea so everybody sort of has an idea of what is currently being done, has been done over the years in the community as far as community-based services. We have been operating the Community College Pathways program for autism for a number of years, currently located at 4 community colleges in the state. We have branched out. I mean, one of the side benefits, if there was, of the pandemic is the increased use of tools such as Zoom, Teams, and so forth. And so we are doing a virtual career mentoring program similar to Pathways. And so this is open to any student who, regardless of where they live and regardless of what college they're involved with, to receive these type of mentoring services. In addition, we're focusing on a pathway plans for success. It's a work readiness program that focuses on career goals, training needs, and behavioral and social skills building. This program, in addition to being offered at the Workforce Center, is also offered virtually several times throughout the year. Our Driver's Ed program This is something, again, that's new, that came out of the pandemic. Prior to this, all the classroom stuff had to be done in person. As a result of the pandemic, the MVA, the Motor Vehicle Administration, went from a temporary during the pandemic to doing virtual, and that was just, during the period of the pandemic. What they found was this method of service delivery was really good, and so they have now allowed for the in-classroom teaching part to continue to be virtually. So our driver's ed instructors can teach anybody from anywhere around the state virtually. And then if that individual, when they need to go, can complete their behind the wheel requirements, can do so in their community through one of the local driver's ed education businesses, near them. And in those cases, we're paying for that training to occur. The other community-based services that, again, we provide, we do worksite assessments. And this is done at the employer's business. We have staff that go in, OTs, PTs, assistive technology professionals who go in and work with that business if they're hiring somebody, or they have in need of somebody who has an employee that might need some assistance. We have a low vision support group that is provided locally in each of the field offices as well as virtually. We have a self-advocacy support group for students who are blind, low vision, that's also done virtually. So again, anywhere anybody needs to participate in that, then they can do so from around the state. Our apprenticeship program, which we talked with you all in one of our meetings, is done both in person and virtually. So we don't need to necessarily have them come into the center. We can have those sessions with them at home. Our job placement and employment services are also either in person or virtually. So again, not necessarily they have to come into the center for assistance. Our academic assessment and remediation services are also in person and virtually. And Jim, if you have, just give 1 minute here. Can you talk about the one student that we just talked about last week, just to kind of give people an idea?
Sure. Yeah, I had the pleasure of doing a teacher observation and got to observe a virtual session of a young man, and he lives down in St. Mary's County, and he's a young man on the autism spectrum and was never able to complete high school, and they've been tutoring him. He's raised 2 grade levels already. He's gone from the pre-GED into the GED program, and due to his family circumstances and things like that, it's difficult for him to come to the center, and so they've been able to progress him, and he's doing fabulous, working towards his completion of his GED.
Thank you, Jim. Next slide. Okay, expansion. So we are, again, based off a lot of the recommendations from this commission, we've already started to work on expanding our services. Currently, we talked to you all about the training with CVS, and so we've identified and began working with Prince George's County because CVS has identified that this is an area of the state that they need help and support in providing staffing for their various drugstores around that county. So our Community College of Baltimore County is assisting Prince George's Community College and setting up the curriculum for the CVS training. The training is expected to take place sometime this spring once we get all the documents signed and so forth. In addition, DORS Workforce Services is working in conjunction with Community College of Baltimore County and holding the training courses on campus. And so we're going to be looking to move our certified nursing assistants and child care programs to the Community College of Baltimore County's Catonsville campus. We're expecting the childcare to take place later this summer, and the Certified Nursing Assistants Training Program to take place in the fall of 2023. Our Autism Employment Job Club, again, has already started to take place. We'll begin, these job clubs will be held in the local field offices with those clients who are ready to go to work. And our computer skills development program, this is teaching basic computer skills in classes. We'll be holding these in our local field offices in the coming months. Now, looking towards the future, keeping our fingers crossed for House Bill 1222, Senate Bill 934. That if we get the 74 additional positions, of which 14 will be used to expand our community-based programs, we're looking to provide, again, some of the additional services, expand our employee base training with local businesses. And again, this is something similar to Sephora and CVS. We've already have been in contact with several major corporations about doing this. And so we're working through a lot of that work now. Expanded customized training, and again, professional animal workers, warehouse technicians, again, childcare, certified nursing assistants with a local community college. In particular, for some of these things, it does take a lot of time to get them set up because there is a hands-on experience that these individuals go through. It's not just a classroom experience. So we need to spend time finding or businesses that are willing to take on the individuals that are in these training programs so they can get that hands-on experience. So this does take time for each one of these programs to get set up. Expand behavioral health counseling. This is a big one. This is something that we have a lot of individuals, whether they're on the spectrum or have mental health issues. So we want to expand this program that we're currently offering. We have 3 individuals, 2 professional mental health counselors and a nurse that are on this team, and we're looking to expand that services so we have better coverage. Again, expanding our assistive technology. We have several labs that are housed at the Workforce and Technology Center. So we're looking to, again, expand this opportunity to build those labs out and be able to take some of this equipment that we have on the road. And so we're looking to do that. Again, trying to look at the in-person driving. There are some individuals, unfortunately, who do not benefit from virtual training. So they do need to have the benefit of in-person training. So again, this is an area that we're looking to expand on if we're provided these additional pens. These would be for individuals who are deaf or on potentially or autistic. Okay, next slide. Dina? That's you? Oh, sorry, wrong slide. My fault. Currently, we do have a very good working relationship with the Division of Early Intervention and Special Education. Our transitioning specialist meets regularly with the special ed. We do a lot. We do joint training with the local educational agencies. Looking at individual programs, educational program coordinators, the chairs, and the intersection of between special ed and the Division of Rehabilitation Services, transitioning services. We also collaborate and attend the State Transitioning Facilitators Steering Committee to inform and apprise these steering committees, facilitators of new DORS information and programs. And then finally, we participate on the Special Education State Advisory Board councils, which is comprised of family members and individuals with disabilities and state agency representatives. which is tasked to advise special education in administering, promoting, planning, coordinating, and improving the delivery of special educations and related services under IDEA.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning. Just so you know, I am Dr. Diane Collins, Deputy State Superintendent for the Office of Teaching and Learning. Just to pick up where Scott left off, one of the exciting priorities between DORS and the Division of Early Intervention and Special Education Services is really focused around building capacity, right? How do we make sure that LEAs have the knowledge and skills to work collaboratively with DORS? So one of the things that we're going to be focusing on is joint professional learning opportunities with the LEAs. And we've identified the following 4 topics, although based on evaluation and input from the LEAs, these are subject to change. But one of the things that we want to focus on is unpacking the DORS services and supports to really demystify any misinformation that may be out there, to help folks really understand the services and supports that DORS offers. Another area is understanding the process for vocational rehabilitation and pre-employment transitioning services. Another is support for special populations such as low vision, blind, and deaf. And then another one is the coordination and collaboration between the Department of Early Intervention and Special Education, DORS, and local education agencies, really to break down those silos and implement tangible practices that we can all hold ourselves accountable to in order to move the work forward. Another area that we'd like to do is, that we're going to do is hold an annual joint training conference on the VR transitioning, with the VR transitioning counselors, the LEA transitioning professionals, and other transitioning professionals as well. And again, the conference would focus on tangible best practices in Maryland, but also nationally. What else is happening that we don't know about that we can tap into and really utilize to enhance what's happening here in Maryland? We are also focusing on improving data use and information sharing between DORS and our local education agencies. As we know, in Blueprint, it directs MSDE in a collaboration with the Accountability and Implementation Board, also known as AIB, to develop and implement a new financial management system and a student data system. And this would allow us to track and analyze school funding requirements and integrate this into the data systems that are within our LEAs. So we want to leverage the data communication components of this system and include DORS data. We want, to the extent possible, this would enable DORS to increase the availability of data with LEAs. Again, data sharing agreements to make the communication more efficient and seamless. Provide information to the LEAs about services that DORS provides, including Indicator 14, and that tracks students who are on an IEP, and beyond what they're doing 1 year after they have left the secondary school. And then also looking at receiving student information from LEAs to enable DORS to make decisions for a student who has applied for services. We believe that if this is successful, non-manual data transmission will increase the speed of determination of services. So again, greater efficiency and transparency in support of services for students. Mr. Dayhoff may have a little bit more to add as we transition into talking about another exciting pilot that we'd like to do.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Collins. Yeah, one of the interesting pieces of this in particular is, this is just, I think, an interesting example of how MSD can leverage its role as the State Department of Education to really expand beyond just the typical headquarters function and to really bring that innovation and that policy work, across our silos, right, and across and into and through and with DORS. And so this new statewide finance and data system is a really interesting component of that. It's technically something that's required under the blueprint. It establishes this. We currently use a system called the AFR system, which is essentially held together by bubblegum, stick, and glue, and Scotch tape. And the law blueprint recognized that in order for us to maintain the account and enforce the accountability and compliance mechanisms associated with the blueprint, we needed to have a high quality system that will allow for that sort of transmission. And we are in the process of doing that now, and it's a really awesome opportunity to leverage that work and be able to think comprehensively about what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish, and to bring that data and accountability and transparency to this work as well. With that being said, other exciting and innovative solutions we are looking at is, and this harkens a little bit back to the University of Maryland, the CTCI study that we're working on right now, where we're trying to consider innovative processes and pathways to, whether it's to put a finite cost on determining a fee-for-service model, actually executing the screening, doing this work. And this is a pilot of a new approach to tackling this that leverages new and burgeoning artificial intelligence technologies to help with screening. So we are exploring the creation of this pilot program that would go through fiscal year 2025 and would allow us to reduce the amount of human time necessary for some of these data collection efforts, right? I mean, some of this screening is really pulling information from scan documentation, those sort of records, and taking that information and being able to recognize it, to run that against criteria, and to render a decision. So there really isn't necessarily a qualitative decision-making component, but the human capital part comes in just the nature of the process itself, the types of forms, how those forms are transmitted, all that information. So what this would allow us to do would be to reduce that human capital effort there, which also means that we can focus more on service delivery with the staff that we have, not necessarily having to invest that time in the human capital, if this works, right? It's a pilot, if it works. But it is something we are certainly interested in. It would be a first-in-the-nation approach to doing this and tackling this in this way.
All right. Good afternoon, Commission members. This is State Superintendent Mohammed Chowdhury. You heard from my team. You heard from Scott, who is of my team. MSDE is DORS, and DORS is MSDE. That is how I see it. That is how I started this role. That is how it was for 100 years. And I will tell you, that is how I hope to see it in perpetuity while I'm in this role. All as you continue to deliberate, I would ask you to really look at the attention and care MSDE gives to DORS. I can't speak for the past. I was not here. I can tell you what I inherited, but I can speak to the present. And I have told the team there is nothing more insulting to our work than losing a part of our house. And Scott can tell you has hung out more than me than any state superintendent combined, including the person whose name this building is after. And so he may not like it all the time, but I do. And we always talk about three things. We talk about what's going on now, what's on the horizon, how we're getting better. Right off the bat, I found out that the staffing situation was dire, right? They were paid pennies. Frankly, if I could wave a wand and raise that 60,000 and make them the #1 paid DORS counselors, examiners in the country, I would. But I have other agencies that are in the way, called DBM and other things when those decisions happen. However, one of the things that I said is we can't have DC, we can't have Virginia, we can't have these states beating us. And so I commissioned a study. It took a year, and that's too darn long, but it took a year, and we pulled it off. Not because we were slow walking it. The team can tell you every day, where are we with DBM? Where are we? And finally, on July of 2022, it got approved, and we went right to work. Staffing levels are stabilizing. We're literally hitting 0 vacancies. The wait list has stabilized. You have seen it. We are trending right above 2,600. The last time we were in the realm of 2,500 was in 2017, when the examiner vacancies actually were higher than what it is today. And we're going to continue to do that. Right now, there's about 41 vacancies in other types of roles, and we're going to make sure we zero that out. Is it 41 the last time I saw it? Yes. I'm looking at Krishna to make sure I have the number down to the ones place. On top of that, I heard loud and clear the importance of community-based services. And I told Scott. Scott first told me, well, we need more positions. Okay, well, what can you do now? What can you do now? Are there things we can pilot? Is there things we can push? And so you're seeing that. You're seeing the team respond to community-based services and expanding that. And so I'm excited to see that and have that happen. Maryland is just not defined by the core. Maryland is spread all throughout the state. I can tell you that. I've been to every school system now since I've been here multiple times over. On top of that, we have a bill that is on the horizon. Hopefully that passes. I can tell you personally, if you have not seen us during legislative session, the days of MSD just sitting passively and having stuff done to it are done. We are very active. We take our independent agency in the state constitution seriously. I weighed in over 200 times in my first session. I think I'm about to match that or exceed that this year. Not only that, we personally secured a cross-file, Senator Zucker, which now increases the likelihood of this passing, and I hope for it to pass because frankly, I can't have North Carolina ratios beating me. We can do better. On top of that, we are moving individuals off the wait list for categories that have not been open in years, right? Open in years. When you're looking at category 2, right, has not opened since 2018. These are our Marylanders, every number. It's easy to just wash the wait list and be like, they're just numbers. No, there's a human being behind them. Whether or not they have a severe disability or an extreme disability, at the end of the day, we need to look to see who they are and get them services, or determine whether or not DORS is the appropriate service level for them, and then get to the people who need them. As I said, I'll just wrap up with, I walked into MSDE knowing that all of its parts are MSDE. I didn't see it differently. You can ask Scott. And I have no incentive to make it harder on myself. I really don't. I could have just said, hey, you know what, take DORS. Right when I came, they took JSES, which I was upset about. I wish I was here. I could have fought to keep that. I always say you are defined by your most struggling student, your most struggling Marylander, truly. Like, I'm a product of Title I schools. I'm a government kid. At the end of the day, this is why I do this work. And so I hope that, as you continue guys to deliberate and decide on recommendations and what you make, just know whether you decide to give me another board. I'm always wonder, I think Maryland loves its boards, whether it is to separate DORS. At the end of the day, what will happen while it's with me, DORS will continue to get better. Even if you voted to release it, I assure you that waitlist will trend down and vacancies will trend to 0, because that's the kind of person I, myself, and my team are, and that's how we will define our work. As I said, the state board will tell you, right? I told them, hey guys, do you know there's something called DORS? Do you know there's that DORS? I want you to judge my evaluation against DORS. And that's what they're doing. And Chin Bianca is here today. She can tell you about that. One of the things that she's on the state board around the shoehorn. One of the things I'm kicking off, I plan to do, is use the state board space to be able to tell the story of DORS services and how it's impacting Marylanders. I have changed how state board meetings work. I like to spotlight best practices. I like to spotlight what's happening, because that's how you know whether or not things are working. So that's something we're gonna kick off. We've been talking a lot about that with Scott. And so I am here to answer any questions with my team. Again, I will end with the sentence, MSDE is DORS and DORS is MSDE, and that's how I see it. I don't see it any other way. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Marlo Lemon, Commission Chair. And I did have a couple of comments and questions and things as I listened to the board members speak. I've had to write some things down to keep myself on track. It has been a privilege to serve as Commission Chair for the last 6 months as a representative of the Parents Place of Maryland and the proud mother of 2 transition age youth. I didn't take my role on the commission representing families lightly. So if our recommendations and suggestions are not acted upon, they just become words on a sheet of paper, like the IEP. From a parent perspective, topics 7 and 8, whether DORS should stay in MSDE and outside of MSDE, unless you are a parent ingrained in the trenches, I don't think that's a question that parents are asking. I'm grateful that the commission was formed, but as a parent, communication, service, and efficiency must improve at DORS. I appreciated Dr. Collins saying making communication seamless, a joint transition conference, and breaking down silos, because I truly think that that's what we need. As a clear communication plan between DORS and the school system staff must be in place so parents and families are not confused on policies and procedures. What is DORS? Do I have to self-referral? Do I wait for them to call? Do I have to sign off on the agency linkages page? What is the agency linkages page if someone doesn't know? More staff should be hired and trained to meet the growing disability population, which sounds like you all are definitely moving in that direction. DORS staff should have the flexibility to telework or flex hours. I understand that DORS is under MSDE, and I understand as a former teacher going back into the classroom. However, as a mother of 2 transitioning age youth, when the DORS counselors need to see them between 9 and 3, I have to have a flexible position and time to, okay, you're gonna know, he's happy about missing school, but it's not conducive to families' schedules or needs. Services should not be dependent upon if families have a well-informed DORS counselor, and services should be accessible to all families and communities. So I urge you to please use the commission report to truly change practices and policies within DORS to better serve our Maryland families.
Ms. Lemon, if I may. Okay. I do want to share some information. I know that you and I had a discussion about teleworking, and I shared some information with you, but I would also like to share information that we have made it public and to some individuals. We have talked about this with representative of employees at DORS, but I do want to share some facts about what happened during the telework process at DORS. And I'll just read what we have shared. Unfortunately, telework during the pandemic exacerbated the work backlog situation. In 2019, there were 2,499 backlog cases. In 2020, there was 5,804 backlog cases, and in 2021, when employees at DORS were teleworking, the number of backlog cases more than doubled to 12,939. As of September 22, there were 24,528 backlog cases at the Disability Determination Services, and 2,777 clients were on the wait list at DORS. The DORS wait list that we are currently experiencing is the highest in the nation. And most importantly, the average time span for clients requesting assistance from DORS is 5 years and DDS 9 months. So that's why we have talked about having employees, in the office working to assist clients. And one thing that I know that you are for is providing services to clients, to students, to those individuals who need the services more than any other group within the state, because these are the individuals who many times need our support and our help and our assistance. There are many other things that I could share with you about what situations occurred during teleworking, but I think the numbers speak for themselves to the situation.
Let me weigh in on this. This entire agency was loosely teleworking, and it was a mess. And I will own that comment, and a lot of people will own that. It was such a mess that they created another board to implement the biggest law in the state called the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. We are restructuring everything and bringing everything back to where it needs to be. Customer service is a big deal to me. I'm not philosophically against it, but I'm not for it in the way it was, where it was just loose. People were not even showing up to offices when even the leadership team would show up. There was no rhyme or reason on who was doing it. So we plan to bring it back. I have told the team to put together a plan for me to bring it back. At some point in this year, I plan to unveil that plan and how to bring it, but it's not for everyone. The state doesn't guarantee a device. The state doesn't guarantee internet or infrastructure. In terms of flex hours, I'm all for that. We do that right now with our childcare community. We oversee 7,000 childcare providers. We inspect them, we close them, we open them, we grant them and people forget that part of MSDE, but we do, and we have like extended hours that goes till 8 p.m., 9 p.m., because our childcare, many of them mom and pop, many of them women of color, are not able to actually take their time in the day to receive the technical assistance to do so. All for that, but we do plan to bring it back for those it will work for, not some kind of blanket approach where 2 days here, 3 days here, 2 days here, 3 days. I'll tell you what happens during that part. Entire offices or phones go unanswered and everything else. So we plan to bring it back with accountability, with performance logs, and I plan to do that. That's even before this commission existed. Scott knows, I've talked to him about this, but in the loose manner that it was, I just won't. I won't do that to Marylanders. I just won't. I mean, and frankly, the facts are the facts around that. And I can tell you, people have tried to use the congressional delegation on me. People have tried to use Governor Hogan on me. Every possible way they have tried to get me to bend to bring it back, and I have not, including the state board who has my back around that. And so at the end of the day, customer service and quality service will rule the day for me, and that matters. But I am not philosophically against it, but I plan to bring it back with structure, with accountability for those who can thrive in it. And so just know that, Ms. Lemon. Yeah.
Thank you. And again, coming back with policies and procedures that meet the needs of the customer is just where I am.
Yes.
Okay, we have several questions. Start with Jay. The first one, will guidance be included in these trainings as well? It's important that they also be aware of 504 children. So is that for Dr. Collins?
I think that's for the joint trainings.
Joint training.
Oh, the joint trainings.
Yes, the answer is yes.
So Jay, hopefully you heard, she said the answer is yes.
And I think what we need to make sure we're doing is leveraging information about where the gaps in knowledge are and plan the training to align to address that, right? Just not planning it blanket, but make sure we're leveraging information that we know is out there that isn't clear to plan the trainings.
Thank you. The other question, which
hi. Sorry, this is Laura McKenzie. That was my question about the non-pubs and being included. I wasn't sure, because I'm sure you have all the direct contact information you need for LEAs, but it just as the non-public representative, I was hoping to, if there's a group email I could be included in, so that way as trainings occur, I could be sending that information out to other transition professionals in non-public schools. I'm just trying to figure out how to be looped into how and when trainings are occurring.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will 504 students be included in the new data system?
I think at the end of the day, to the greatest extent, we can include special education 504 data, sure, without any kind of compromising on laws and in terms of what you can include. Absolutely, if we can do that. You know, one of the things I thought coming from Texas, where we have 1,400 districts and 5 million kids, was like, oh man, it must be easier. Everything must be more standardized. No, it's not. In fact, I find more silos than I've ever seen. I'm not joking about that. I really do, all in the name of local control. I also sit on the board of Juvenile Services Education. I am a board member there. And even transition, like the youth, one of the greatest reasons for recidivism is the lack of high quality transition. And that transition is all over the place too. And we're going through that reckoning as well. So I see the same concept, different sets of kids, different sets of needs, but I'm seeing the same issues in terms of 24 flavors of data reporting. And so we will do what we can to the greatest extent possible. I can't just say, yes, I can. I have until I go under the hood. Yeah.
And thank you. These questions started coming in as different people was presenting. This next one is, apologies if this was previously covered. Is DORS going to have access to Kerwin funding?
No, that's not my decision at the end of the day. The way they get access to Blueprint funding is current special education. Does DORS get a specific set of Blueprint dollars from the Blueprint that goes directly to DORS? No. That does not happen. The vast majority of DORS is funded through federal dollars, and a small percentage of that is state aid, but the blueprint was not built in that way. These new programs that you're seeing, the UMD partnership, all of those, that's because I was able to leverage federal state set aside of one time of ESSER dollars to be able to do it. I'm never going to get this money back, so I got to use it to create new and innovative things that can outlast and be sustained on our little bit of state aid that we have. So the answer is no. Other than the students who sit in school systems who generate that money, but that money is ultimately going to the school system for their needs and supports. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott and Justin, but I'm pretty sure that's it. Yeah.
What is the procurement timeline to acquire, implement, and train staff on the use of the new integrated system? They said slide 25, they believe.
Well, the state procurement timeline is slow and not fun. That's not within my control, but we can talk about that system since DBM is currently using it to facilitate efficiencies in hiring.
Well, no, this is the statewide financing.
Oh,
piece.
the state,
We
oh, we
already
already have it. We already have that, yeah. So we already have the system, and we're first meeting the first demand of the blueprint that wants us to bring more financial transparency at the school level. So we decided to, hey, while we're doing that, let's also try to integrate better data collection on the special education side as well.
The state school board should include an individual with a disability if MSDE/DORS truly is functioning as a unit and ensuring representation.
Why don't we go advocate to the governor to have the next time when there's a renewal to go place someone with a disability? I have no problem with that. The only thing that there's a bill right now to add a principal to the state board. All right, let's go to 14 to 15. Let's go 16, 17. The librarians want to add a librarian. Governance ultimately does not solve it. You guys did a deep dive into governance. So yes, absolutely. There's also multiple committees and multiple agencies. We have the Special Education State Advisory Council that has those individuals that we meet regularly with. If we want to put an individual with disabilities on the state board, absolutely, I'm for that. But use the existing slots. At the end of the day, I don't appoint them. The governor does. And so I would definitely welcome that. I don't think, because there's no requirement when you replace someone or when someone is up for renewal, that you have to, you can choose who you want to choose at the end of the day at the governor level. Yep.
Because I do think that representation of individuals with disabilities, the standard is higher for the Division of Rehabilitation Services. And if you're saying that DORS is a unit of MSDE and the school board is governing DORS, that there should be that level of representation. I think that when you look at even the composition of the representation for this particular group, it was heavy on the school side and not as heavy on the representation of individuals with disabilities. And I guarantee you that that will catch up with us at some point in time, because advocates and the disability communities feel very, very strongly about nothing about us without us. And so I do think that that is something that the onus shouldn't just be on us to be pushing. You should be pushing as well. We should all be pushing.
I can't vouch for who my bosses are. Respectfully, I can't vouch for who my bosses are, so it does have to come from the outside. That's actually inappropriate for me to vouch who my vouch. But I am telling you on record right now, I would love to have an individual or individuals with disability, I also said plural, as when the next renewal or replacements happen, I would love to have that. I welcome that. So I'm saying on that, but I can't go ahead and vouch for who my members are. But I would ask you guys to do that. But what you're hearing from me, I have no problem with that on my end.
Great.
If I may, Ms. Lemon, I would just like to add that the members of this commission was legislated. So we had specific members that, specific positions and individuals that we had to place on the commission.
Ms. Chang just said, I agree and confirm with superintendent's statement. Then Megan Jones says, in addition to teleworking, I believe policies that encourage meetings with clients in the community is important to improve the customer experience given travel and difficulties for many individuals. Virtual meetings work for some, but not all. And sorry to jump around, but that reminds me that I wanted to circle back on a point previously made about the need to find ways to provide individual services in the communities and the need to provide services with individuals without disabilities rather than at a segregated training facility.
Okay.
From Megan, regarding the blueprint funding, I had a recommendation in my written comments that DORS and LEAs work collaboratively to serve students through a MOU. I would add a recommendation that DORS and LEAs work together to serve students. Colleges and career services are in its recommendation.
This is Jody Boone. We currently have a MOU that we're working on. The staff specialist at DORS and Eugene are working together to draft this MOU for all the local education agencies. Excuse me. And the way that it's created, we have a template, and then each education agency can customize it based on their processes. So that should be going out later this spring to all of the LEAs.
I'm sorry, Scott, and if you could share some of the ideas that we have for the community engagement office that you talked about, the new position, because we talked about just what the suggestion is.
Yes, certainly will. I mean, again, one of the things we're envisioning this office in doing is actively engaging out in the community. So this would mean meeting with advocacy groups, family groups, school systems, parents, and so forth, so we can get that feedback, try to find out where the breakdowns are occurring and whether or not, again, it's a systemic issue that we need to address, a policy issue, or whether or not our communication is not clear. One of the things we heard recently is we began looking at the whole issue around communication and confusion and sort of why one office made a decision this way and a different office made a similar type of decision. Another way is, some of our policies aren't written as well as they should be, which leads to a wide interpretation of how that policy is implemented. An example of this is our college funding policy, and so we're right in the middle of now taking a very serious look and rewriting that entire policy to make it a little bit more understandable. It's a complicated issue to begin with because you're dealing with a number of different factors such as the FAFSA, scholarships, and so forth. So it is a complicated situation, but the goal is try to simplify it so there is consistency in delivering that service, if that's on an individual plan for employment across office to office, but also to be able to provide a clear direction to the parents themselves so they have an understanding and have a clear understanding of what it is that we will be able to assist them in if their child is going to go to college.
I did want to add one more thing, sorry. Actually, Ms. Lemon, why don't you go and then I'll add my point.
Megan had her hand up, and I apologize, I didn't see it when I was reading the comments. So Megan.
Sorry, I added my I had added my comment to the chat. I had wanted to respond to the discussion about the board member position and just say that I think we could recommend that the legislature include instruction that a currently existing position, if we think it would be inappropriate to add a new position. I think we could add or recommend to the legislature that language be added about the need for someone within the currently existing criteria be selected who is also a person with a disability. So I think we can make the recommendation without necessitating an addition of another number.
Thank you, Megan.
I was just going to say that's one way to do it. Currently, we do have a state board member, Dr. Joan Sullivan, who is a director of a non-public special education school on the state board, and she's been there. So just to give you some context there. But yes, yeah, you can, you know, at the end of the day, as I said, I am not against the concept. I welcome it. But if we're going to also do that, I'd like to also have people who represent English learners and who speak other languages, the fastest growing subgroup, and what that looks like. I mean, the translation and the level of translation services, Scott knows this, is dire. Maybe I got spoiled by Los Angeles and Texas, but it's time to catch up to that topic in Maryland as well, just to give you a sense of that and whose voices often get left out as well. And there are many Marylanders whose English is a second language with disabilities as well, too.
Thank you. Dr. Archer, I see your hand.
Yes, I think this references slide number 16, but don't hold me to that. I am just concerned and ask that we all be exercise some caution with that new position. One of the comments made during the presentation was that there was a person doing some of that work, but they were overwhelmed because they had another job. When I look at the slide or the two slides that reference the new position, it looks like that's a lofty job description. So nothing that needs to be attended to now, but you know, you can create a new job description and overload that person as well. So just need to pay attention to that, or it'll be a long list of tasks, but the quality of the work will be thin. So my comments.
Thank you, Dr. Archer.
Thank you.
Is that it, Ms. Lemon? That's it for the questions for that section, Ms. Chowdhury.
Okay. Thank you, commission members. And as you continue to deliberate, I wish you well and the wisdom, and we are available for anything that you need in terms of data requests and such. And as I said, you know, at the end of the day, I ask you to just look at the last year and a half on where DORS is and where it's headed, and where we're going when it comes to our work, and how integral it is as part of MSD and such. And as I said, at the end of the day, quality services will drive my first frontmost piece in terms of the work. I deal with this both with our 7,000 childcare providers as well as our school systems and everything else, and that will ultimately be my North Star in making sure our Marylanders with disabilities are serviced adequately and properly. That's why we also did our contract with Parents Place to get the raw feedback and what that is. And I asked Scott, why do we have disparate customer services in different places? Why can one counselor be really good and why is another one, and what's going on there? And I've asked them for, like, what's the detail there? And one of the things uncovered is our policies are not even the same, right? So at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? Making sure it's consistent all throughout, right? Just like I obsess about making sure every third grade teacher is teaching reading with a science-based approach across all of our 1,400 classrooms, that our 1,400 schools that exist in the state of Maryland. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for letting me come and present today. And if there's anything else, please reach out to Dr. Lawson, and she can get you any information you may need. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to, if it's okay, take a 5-minute break, and then we'll be right back. your comment in 1 second. So we have a comment in the chat. Just to be clear, a representative of a non-public school is not the same as an individual with a disability who has successfully used DORS services to obtain employment. In addition to bringing knowledge of VR, they can also help inform the career readiness aspect of the blueprint. Thank you, Jade, duly noted.
All right. Okay. We've kind of gone through the last 2+ sessions talking about topics 7 and 8, since they really, from a federal level, really talk about the governance of the division and so forth. So I guess at this point in time, we'd probably want to open it up for discussion and recommendations for topic number 7, which is what your recommendations are concerning moving the Division of Rehabilitation Services to another agency. And we'll open up the floor to whoever may want to comment.
Megan, did I see, I don't know if Megan's still on, I thought that you all had some recommendations in your submission. I don't know if you want to review or discuss those.
I mean, it's up to, I guess, the group. I did submit written recommendations. Specifically, Disability Rights Maryland felt like we didn't have enough information to make a recommendation that DORS stay with MSDE at this time, and we would recommend further investigation or review, I guess, of options that different state agencies could offer and benefits that they could offer in the management of DORS. I submitted quite a few recommendations. I can go through, not necessarily on this point, but I can go through them in more detail if folks would like, or if folks have reviewed on their own.
I think your specific recommendation for topic 7 was a study.
Yep, yeah, as I just said.
Okay.
Do you think we should vote on? Let's just vote on. Scott. Okay.
Since we know the report, the final report is due on March 15th, and this is our last commission as a total body meeting, keeping in mind that Dr. Lawson and Scott are accepting written statements and comments from everyone, we can take a vote now on topic 7. So in topic 7 is what are your recommendation concerning moving DORS to another agency? So we can, by show of hands.
I mean, I agree that additional information would be needed before a decision could be made.
What additional information, Jade?
So I think that it gets back to, you know, would another agency be able to better support, represent DORS? I mean, I think the bottom line is that we don't have enough information to actually make a recommendation.
Agreed. And I'll echo, you know, what I've said in previous meetings. I've been asking pretty much since the beginning of this commission to hear not just what MSDE adds to DORS, but what other state agencies could provide by way of management, specifically the Department of Labor. I think Health and Human Services has come up. I never got that information about what those state agencies could provide. And so I've heard what MSDE can provide, but that alone doesn't tell me whether the division should stay with MSDE. So I feel I don't have enough information to recommend one way or another.
Dr. Archer?
Yes, I am not sure that the discussions that we've had over the last couple of weeks anyway really point to there being a significant difference made in terms of improvement in service delivery just with the change of the parent housing agency. I think even though we could all use more information, and I agree with the others needing more information, I can't sit here and say what that information is. What we probably can talk about is what are the improvements, the significant improvements that we would want to see in terms of service delivery, because only then will we determine whether that has anything to do with where DORS rest, or does that really require significant shifts within DORS, both in terms of policy, procedure, mindset, expectations, and holding people accountable. And if we don't deal, if DORS doesn't deal with that, then it really doesn't matter where it sits. You know, one of the things, I left a voicemail message in response to the Dr. Lawson's call. And, you know, I think I've heard enough in these meetings to indicate that there are clearly some best practices already right within Maryland. And so do we look at, and those who are in the field providing direct services or overseeing services are in a position to indicate what those best services are? And then, you know, do we replicate those at in other areas? Do we rewrite policy and do we rewrite procedure? Do we rewrite expectations, and do we rewrite how we hold people accountable? Because I think that those are the things that can occur now as there's deeper exploration in terms of where does DORS land.
I mean, my concern is, yes, there's support from MSDE now, but what happens if leadership changes? How does that institutionalized beyond leadership? And so, you know, so I don't think that there's a recommendation to move it now, but I also don't want someone to come back because suddenly there's this transformation over at MSDE and now MSDE, you know, no one at leadership is returning Scott's phone calls. He's got no, you know, support input. And yet they're running around citing, well, you know, this group said that it shouldn't be moved to another agency. So that's where I struggle with, okay, so, but how do we ensure that the leadership and support that's being demonstrated now is sustained for the future?
Thank you. Shanique, did you?
I would just like to say that
I am in agreement with, I think it was Dr. Archer who just mentioned, I'm not sure what I would say it looks like for DORS to go with another agency or whether it stays with the state. I totally agree that it's all about practice and protocol and follow through and accountability no matter where they land. And so I agree that more information may be needed, but again, I'm not one to say what information should be provided to prove whether or not practices will be better or increase for our students. I really believe that it's more of a practice thing and making sure things are done and folks are held accountable for getting the work done no matter where DORS may land. So I just wanted to note that I was in agreement with Dr. Archer.
Thank you.
I would like to say that that is one of the things that Mr. Chowdhury has been adamant about, is that the policies, processes, and procedures, as well as what we implement to improve DORS, are things that remain and cannot cannot just be something that is a fly-by-night, but we put it into what we do every day at the Division of Rehabilitation Services. You know, the things that was shared today are not things that are for a day, a month, or a year. They are things that will become the fabric of what we provide to clients throughout the state. So it's not something that can be said and not done and not maintained.
Hi, Ellen. Welcome back. Comment?
Thank you. So pillar 3 of the blueprint for Maryland's future in education is college and career readiness. The college and career readiness pillar sets a new college and career readiness standard that prepares graduates for success in college and the workforce by ensuring they have the knowledge and skills to complete entry-level credit-bearing college courses and work in high-wage and high-demand industries. The blueprint aims to have all students meet the CCR standard by the end of their 10th grade year. It goes on and on, and I'm not going to keep reading from it, but this is from the blueprint. And if I understood correctly, and maybe I misunderstood, DORS is not getting funding from this multi-billion-dollar fund that's being made available. So to me, that's true. That's a demonstration that DORS location and MSDE doesn't have a clear benefit. So I would prefer that the commission say, we don't have a recommendation about where it should remain, but exactly what Megan said, which is that there should be further study of it, because I'm not comfortable moving forward saying more information, and also to better understand why DORS isn't getting any of the blueprint funds. Whether it should remain, DORS should remain within MSDE. I think I heard some good reasons and some good things that Dr. Chowdhury is doing and all of you are doing. But I'm not convinced that we as a commission have enough information. So thank you.
Scott, is it anything further that you would like to add about funding?
Well, all I'm going to do is give you my interpretation or my understanding of the funding streams is that it goes strictly to, it's based on a per pupil allocation. So it goes to the school systems and to the individual students and so forth. For blueprint, we're not a part of that. And so, the legislation itself dictated where the funding should go and how it should be allocated. It's not something that MSDE came up with and said, this is how it's going to be distributed. So, Ellen, that's a legislative decision to fund, send all the funding to the local school systems.
Do you know if the request was made? I know there was plenty of MSDE people involved in the commission, and to me, as I read, it just talks all about exactly what DORS' mission is without mentioning DORS, and saying that's what we're trying to create, is this excellent career and college pathways, and it talks about building on support students to meet the standard, enable students to enter a post-CCR pathway, build on the student's strengths, develops a career and technical education system that is aligned with industry's needs, and ensures that pre-kindergarten through 12th grades curriculum standards and assessments are all aligned with the new CCR standard. So it's just shocking to me, since DORS is part of MSDE, that it didn't get funds, since it's a key element of MSDE that promotes career and college readiness. So that's just a concern.
And really, the only individual from MSDE, I know the state superintendent was part of the conversation, and MSDE would provide information, but we had one seat on the commission.
Okay. So, for this particular point, basically, and we can kind of work on the crafting of the language, is then the recommendation is, at the moment, the commission can't make a recommendation until additional information is obtained. I mean, we can, but I mean, we probably need to get the language, probably. Is that, I mean, I'm just trying to paraphrase what I've been hearing, so I'm just trying to, so, you know, if that's the, sort of the recommendation, is.
Scott, can we craft the language and then vote on the language as presented? I think we could also vote on whether or not it should remain at DORS, so that's what it's saying. If it should or if it shouldn't. So I think we get the language crafted and then we see, vote on whether it should remain at DORS.
You can send out a poll to the board. What do you want to do it now?
Megan's comments, written comments, contain wording that might be helpful. As I printed this out, there's no page numbers, but it's under topic 7. And Megan and her disability rights Maryland colleagues, I think captured what at least I'm supporting and recommending.
Sorry, yeah, I apologize. I had to step away. Go into mom mode for a second. I'm happy if folks feel further like tweaking of the comments is needed, happy to provide that. But otherwise, I still stand by the comments that DRM submitted.
Megan, are you oh, okay.
So
Just
for
wanted to make sure
topic
they're in
number
the
7,
chat.
the specific language would be, I'm going to substitute DRM with we, and then other commission members can let me know if they agree or not. We have not received enough data about what MSDE can contribute to the management of the vocational rehabilitation program to say affirmatively that the program should stay with MSDE. We recommend that a follow-up study be undertaken to assess the respective benefits to DORS of remaining housed at MSDE and of being housed within other state agencies. I specified such as the Department of Labor, but we can take or leave that. Commission, while not opposed to maintaining DORS at MSDE on a temporary basis while other options are explored to determine if there is a better fit, we do not, I would say, have enough information that MSDE is ultimately to determine that MSDE is ultimately the appropriate parent department for DORS. It is our position that the DORS should remain open for a relocation of the division pending further research and collection of data.
Scott, that's a lot of recommendations. I think we just get very specific language.
And Megan?
Yes.
Did you strike the sentence, commission members seem focused at present?
I would. That was
okay, perfect.
On the reasoning behind DRM.
Yeah.
What I thought was disagreement based on previous meetings, but it sounds like now there's sort of consensus for the other points. So yeah, I'd strike that sentence.
Okay. If that is struck, then I am in agreement with the statement. I think that pretty much captures where the commission stands at this time.
Megan to repeat it. Lillian just had a comment. Miss Lillian, can you repeat that, please?
Yes, I was simply saying, as long as under topic 7 in Megan's document, as long as commission members seem focused at present on keeping DORS, blah, 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 as long as that is struck, the remainder of the narrative I concur with. I think that pretty much based on the discussion I've heard, I think that pretty much captures the sentiment in terms of relocation.
Thank you.
So Scott, we want to make sure that we have that. There were several different recommendations within the one recommendation. So the recommendation would be that the commission has not received enough data about what MSD is contributing to the management of the vocational rehabilitation program to affirmatively say that the program should stay at MSD. That should be what we move forward for a vote. And then some of these other things can be additional recommendations.
Could you read that one more time?
The commission believes that they have not received enough data about what MSD is contributing to the management of vocational rehabilitation to say affirmatively that the program should stay at DORS.
Stay at MSD.
That was the first sentence.
That's what you want us to vote on.
Yes.
And you don't mean stay at DORS, right? You mean stay at MSDE?
Yes.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
And then also that we recommend that a follow-up study be undertaken.
That would be another recommendation.
Okay,
I think
thank
we're
you.
lumping too many recommendations into
Thank you.
initial recommendation.
Can I ask a point of clarification? Was it that we needed more information from MSDE, or that we had no information about the other options? I felt like we got a lot of information about MSDE. We don't have information about what the other options were. Is that?
That was my intent, right?
I think that we did provide information about other options. I think that was dedicated for one of the meetings when we had speakers come on from to discuss that. So if if you are saying that you did not receive any information, I would beg to differ with that opinion.
It's my belief as a commission member that the information that we received was about the way in which an agency can be moved, or the DORS, the Division of Rehabilitation Services, can be moved, and that process. And I heard a lot about that process and a lot about maybe what's happened in other states. But what I did not hear is a representative from the Department of Labor, a representative from Health and Human Services, and any other potentially relevant agencies to speak to what they specifically could provide in Maryland, what programs they have running right now that might work hand in hand with the division's programs. That's the specific information that I feel that I don't have.
And while Scott is preparing the exact statement, I would like to say that during every meeting, the one thing we always ask, is there anything else that you would like to have information about? And it was near Scott, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it was maybe near the next to the last meeting when this was, I never remember anything specifically about the Department of Labor or the Department of Health. Maybe you remember that.
Well, I did contact the Department of Health, but again, it was just background information. So we didn't get into, a long, lengthy discussion. I mean, that's really at the secretarial level. I mean, that's not necessarily at my level to sit there and discuss what they would take, and so forth as to, that's really, at the superintendent and at the secretarial level of those agencies to, make that kind of decision of whether or not they would even entertain taking on the division. that's, and so forth. So I provided, at least background information of, sort of the back end stuff that are provided. But a lot of that is a much higher level than that. But anyway, as Dr. Lawson said, so I would have down, again, based off this, kind of following up off of Megan's recommendation. And the second recommendation would be the commission recommends that that a follow-up study be undertaken to assess the respective benefits of to DORS of remaining housed at MSD. It probably should be or instead of and, or being housed within another state agency.
Could we move forward with the first vote, Scott?
Sure.
Okay,
Can I just make one comment?
absolutely.
I just want to remind everyone, and I know we talked about this earlier, but DORS works very closely with the Department of Labor already. They are one of our WIOA partners. Scott and I are on the WIOA alignment group. We work very close with all different agencies throughout the state as part of that. Excuse me, our regional directors and program managers, Jim Evans at the WTC. We work very closely with the workforce development boards in each of the locations, and with all the American Job Centers. We cross-refer all the time, so we already are very involved with their programming. And also, I just want to remind everyone that half of our consumers are students in the school systems within Maryland. So that is probably not the case for any of the other agencies that you may be looking at. So I just think it's important to remember that.
And just to add explanation and, counterpoint, part of the reason that I have been asking about DORS since at least when we were meeting in 2022, because I remember being told this was a topic of discussion in the new year. But part of the reason I have been asking about the Department of Labor specifically is that every one of our DORS consumers in Maryland is looking for employment. So half of them may be students, but every one of them is looking to enter the labor force. And so it was part of the reason, or that's really the main driving reason why I wanted to hear what labor specifically could offer.
So Dr. Archer suggested language, thank you. The commission believes it lacks sufficient information and data to make an informed decision as to whether DORS should remain with MSDE or be relocated to a different state agency. So we want people to vote.
And that was just as the first one. And then, of course, there were some successive recommendations to.
Thank you. And thank you for crafting the language. So we can vote. I see someone who put a thumbs up after Dr. Archer's statement, but if you want to vote? Okay, with Shay. So we can do a vote maybe by show of hands, as if you were raising your hand, if you're on Zoom. If you agree with the statement, the commission believes it lacks sufficient information and data to make an informed decision as to whether DORS should remain with MSDE or be relocated to a different state agency. If you agree with this statement, if you can, you could do it, raise your hand sign, please. Those in the room? Those in the room?
So we've got
So 9.
out of oops. So we've got 9 yeas, and then how many? 2, So for that, we have a 9 to 7, it appears we have a 9 to 7 vote in favor of that language.
Thank you for your patience with counting to make sure thank you. So we have 9 that are in agreement with the statement within the chat and 7 nays. Are we gonna vote on the second? Okay. What was the language in that? You might have to read it, Scott.
Okay.
Dr. Lawson. Oh, did you have a question?
Okay, for the second piece of this, then we have, at least how I've got it crafted is, the commission recommends that a follow-up study be undertaken to assess the respective benefits to DORS of remaining housed at MSDE or being housed within another state agency. Sure. The commission recommends that a follow-up study be undertaken to assess respective benefits to DORS of remaining housed at MSDE or of being housed within another state agency.
All right, if you can lower your hand if you had it up. Now we're gonna start the new vote. So if you agree with the statement that Scott just read, if you could raise your hand, please. Regarding the follow-up study. Thank you. I see people voting now. So we have 6 in agreement that a commission study, a follow-up study needs to be done. All right, if those 6 can lower your hands, because we need to take the nays. Thank you so much. Okay. And now if you can raise your hand if you don't think we need a commission study for DORS in other agencies. 6. They're not gonna make this easy. Right now, we have, if you did not vote yay or nay, you can also put it in the chat. But right now, raise your hand if you don't think another commission, we need another follow-up commission study for DORS, and with the placement of DORS. We're tied. It doesn't, right. It doesn't pass because right now we have 6 people that thinks we should have a study and 6 people that do not.
Does the chair break the tie?
Or can we have some discussion? It seems like people may have abstained then. Is there some feedback from the abstention on what might sway them one way or the other? Is there room for language tweaking?
Bianca just raised her hand.
Oh, Bianca.
Yeah, hi. This is Bianca, one of the board of Board of Education representative. I wonder, do I have the vote or I don't? I'm sorry, I meant to ask earlier.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. That's why I did not, I thought I don't have voting privilege.
You do have voting privileges.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Do we need to go back and revote? Do we need to go back and? So you didn't
Right,
vote?
I did not vote. I need
She
to go
abstained.
back and put in my vote. I would not support to have further study because we should focus on our energy to improve and excel our status right now instead of kind of putting a lot of resources to do a long-term study, which I think I would recommend then down the road if you want to kind of look at other models other states would have and have been successfully carried out in other state agency other than the Department of Education among other states, and we could look into that. Otherwise, let's focus on the main task and main challenges ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
May I ask for clarification around Ms. Chang's comment? And that is, I agree that we can look at other entities as well, but I thought that that was part of the recommendation for further study.
Yes, but I would put it as a long-term action, not the short-term say we need to start it now, because the challenge ahead of us that we have vacancy to fill, and we have to clear out the wait time, and we have requests from clients. And I see that more proceeding urgency than to study a long-term goal or long-term model for the DORS program, if whether it should be under MSD or in other state agency.
Okay,
Did
since
I
we
answer
are,
to your questions?
I think we should say
Yeah. Right now. Oh, sorry. Right now, as it stands, recommendation 1 was to get some clarifying information. That was 9 that we all agreed that as a commission, we didn't have enough information to make the decision. So we all agreed. The majority voted for, the majority is set for that one. The second recommendation to have a commission to study it failed, 7-6.
I would also like to say that I think that we should accept and respect the vote of every commission member. I don't think it's appropriate that we ask a commission member to explain their vote. I think that every commission member should be respected and not questioned about how they vote.
Oh, okay. If that's referencing to, if a reference to me, please understand. And if Bianca, if that's the way you took it, please accept my apology. I was asking for clarification, not to challenge the position, because I happen to agree with you, Dr. Lawson. All positions should be respected. And so that's not what I was doing. I was not disrespecting a different opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Archer. I appreciate that.
Okay. Then recognizing the amount of time we have left, and we still have some others to get covered. Move on to number 8, which is determine whether or not Division of Rehabilitation Services should continue to be a division of the Maryland State Department of Education, or whether the Division of Rehabilitation Services should be governed by a board separate from the Maryland State Department of Education.
Scott, I think, don't you need to share some information about, that would mean that DORS would become its own state entity? I think you should share that information.
And just for everybody's clarification, with this type of board, as we discussed in our last meeting, this basically would set, because the way, these boards are established and so forth, this would basically set the Division of Rehabilitation Services up as its own state agency. So I'll open, the floor is open for any discussion.
I agree with Megan and Disability Rights Maryland comment on topic 8.
Okay.
I'd also add, I think if, at least for myself, having said that I don't have enough information to recommend whether MSDE should continue the management of vocational rehabilitation, and feeling that further information is needed to say that it wouldn't make sense to weigh in for myself to recommend that MSDE stay. So at best, I can say I don't have enough information to make any recommendation on this point, because if we're leaving it open for further consideration in the future as to where DORS should be, I think it similarly needs to be open for consideration as to what the governance board should be.
So I guess then the recommendation then that we would have would be, the commission does not have sufficient information about what the MSDE governance board is able to provide to the management. So let me see here.
I think, Scott, what we should do is move forward with a vote on the initial charge of the commission, which was that a determination needs to be made, and you have shared information. The original charge basically said, and let's go back. It said whether there are, if the commission determines that the Division of Rehabilitation Services, should there be a governing board separate from the State Board of Education? I know that comments was made, but I think we move forward with voting on the original charge as mandated by legislation, rather than, not voting on that charge. I think we move forward with that
Megan,
vote.
the topic says, if the commission determines that division should remain a division of the State Department of Education, and we have not made that decision. We have not determined that the division should remain a part of the State Department of Education. So it seems to me we can say the commission cannot, we have to note, we did not determine that it should stay a part of the State Department of Education. Therefore, having not said it should stay with MSDE, we can't say that the state board should continue to be the governing board, because we didn't make the recommendation. Therefore, it could move, and if it moved to labor, obviously the recommendation that MSDE stay the state board wouldn't make sense, and that's what the wording of the charge takes into consideration. It's an if-then statement, and the first condition hasn't been met. We have not determined that the State Department of Education should continue to be the parent organization for DORS.
I think we could say that even though the commission did not make a determination because they did not believe they had enough information, we could still take a vote on number 8 to say, however, the commission do believe that we do not need a governing board. And I think we move forward with a vote on that, Scott. I say we
Jay-
take a vote.
Jay put in her comments. I don't feel like I have enough information, but based on what I do have, I do think the separate board is an option worth exploring more than moving to another agency.
Okay, then we vote on both. But I think we take a vote on whether or not the commission believes that there should be a separate governing board, separate from the State Board of Education.
Before we vote, Dr. Archer, you have your hand up? Was it?
Yeah, for clarification, so I'm looking at the language, and I agree with Megan, it's an if-then situation. And so, Dr. Lawson, am I understanding you to say that the vote is to have we're voting on whether to have a separate governing board?
I don't see it.
We've not
I don't see it as a if-then situation. And even though some commission members may, I see it as we didn't reach agreement on one question, but we can vote on this question. So to me, it's not an if-then.
Even though it says if the commission determines that the Division of Rehabilitation Services should continue to be a division of the State Department of Ed?
And that determination was not made. However, that should not prevent us from making a determination about other mandates of this commission.
Ellen?
Yes, thank you. I think it's the clear wording of topic 8 is that the only way you get to the second part of that topic is if we determined that DORS should continue with MSDE. We have not made that determination, so we can't then answer whether DORS should have a governing board separate from the state. I'm just not comfortable with moving forward on a vote on something that make it inconsistent with what topic 8 requires. So none of it, we in fact, we have determined that we are unable at this moment to determine whether DORS should remain in MSDE. Thus, I don't think it's appropriate for us to try to answer the question or have a vote on whether DORS should have a governing board separate from the State Board of Education. I'm uncomfortable. That not seem to.
And if you, I'm sorry, and if you're not comfortable, then you should vote your conscience and vote that it should not be, that we should have a separate governing board. But to say we're not going to vote because people are not comfortable, I think that that is not the premise of why we have mandates for the commission. So if you feel that way, then you should not vote, or you should vote that we should have a separate governing board. But to say we shouldn't vote for a mandate of the legislation because we do not feel comfortable or because we did not reach an agreement on another question that was mandated, I do not think that is appropriate.
And it's not, I use the term comfortable, but it's my analysis of topic 8 that we cannot vote the second part of it unless we had determined that DORS should continue at MSDE. And so it puts the commission members in an impossible situation because we didn't make that determination. And by voting on that second part, it implies, it requires that we would have made a decision on the first part, which we have not. So, I just think we can't.
I would respectfully disagree.
So then my question is, what does it mean when someone abstains?
That means that your vote will not count either for or against.
Okay. because that's the route I'm going to go, because I fully agree with Ellen that you cannot, well, I'll just leave it. I'll abstain, so I'll put that in the chat
Can
section.
we just,
Yes,
instead of
ma'am.
abstaining, can we just say that agreement was not reached on topic 8?
We can't say that agreement was not reached without a vote. So I would like
Can
to
we all-
recommend,
can we-
Scott,
do
that
we
we
all wanna
move
vote
forward
on-
with the vote.
Okay, Ms. Chang?
Yes, I do have a comment about the topic 8. I think currently we are discussing the topic 8, whether we are making recommendation for the current status of the DORS should be governed by a separate board. I think that is the focus we should be drive our kind of vote to it. And now looking at topic number 7, that impacted on topic number 8, because disregard, something needs to be done now. Thank you.
Scott, we ready to move forward with a vote?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so recommendation that we're about to vote on, you can vote yay, yes, no, or abstain. And the recommendation was, and this is for topic 8, that we do not have sufficient information about the MSDE governing board is able to provide to the management of DORS.
Say that again, please, Ms. Lemon. I think we vote on the mandate as stated.
Okay. So we're going to go back. Well, I'm going to go back and read it. So yes, no, or abstain. If the commission determines that the DORS should continue to be a division of the State Department of Education, whether the DORS should have a governing board separate from the State Board of Education. So we're voting on all of topic 8. If the commission determines, so yes or no, if the commission determines that DORS should continue to be a division of the State Department, or if DORS should have a separate governing body from the State Board of Education. If you are for this recommendation, please raise your hand in the chat. Against the recommendation? And then I'll do abstain. And yes. Okay. And then abstain. Eight people abstained. Oh, 9. 9 people abstained, 5 noes, no yeses.
Okay, so the motion doesn't carry.
Motion doesn't carry. We had 5 noes, 9 abstained, and no yeses.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Discussion, always good. Now we're going to move on to additional recommendations to improve DORS. earlier, I received 2 requests, one from Rachel, one from Megan. Megan specifically asked for information about 3 state agencies compared to Maryland. And so the recommendation that was sent forward was to move the client assistance program from underneath DORS to a different governing structure. I was asked to provide information concerning Maine, South Carolina, Wisconsin, and Maryland. I've put in Missouri, just because, again, going through this process, we've often compared ourselves to Wisconsin and Missouri as states with a similar type of population. So again, it gives some level of balance when you start to look at numbers and figures and so forth. So, next, try to give everybody an idea of where these programs reside. In Maine, prior to 2020, the Client Assistance Program was located in the Maryland Department of Labor. And then the program was transferred to Disabilities Rights Maine during FY22. South Carolina, the CAP program was located in the Department of Administration until 2017 and was relocated to the Protection and Advocacy for People with Disabilities, Inc. in 2018. Wisconsin's CAP program is in the Department of Agriculture in the specific division called Trade and Consumer Protection. Missouri is located in the Missouri Protection and Advocacy Services, and then DORS is located within the Division of Rehabilitation Services. Okay, using the client assistance federal reporting. I went back to 2016 because that's as far back as the public information went, and came forward to 2020 because they have not posted federal fiscal year 21 or 22 at this point in time, which means some CAP programs have not reported their data as of yet. So here are the 2, this is one of the 2 major data points. One is the Client Assistance Program for Information Referral from 2016 through 2020. And so you can see the numbers for each one of those. Again, because Maine's transferred in the middle of their state fiscal year. That's the reason why the Maine disabilities rights numbers in this particular case are so low. But as you can see, go back. You can see over this period of time, the DORS Client Assistance Program did maintain a high level of providing referrals to clients throughout this period of time. Next. Again, 2016 through 2020, these are the number of cases that the Client Assistance Program was carrying. Again, from Wisconsin to Missouri, Maine Labor, again, Maine Disabilities Rights, and then South Carolina, and then DORS. So the DORS Client Assistance Program is providing services comparable to a lot of the other states. Okay, so that was the information that was asked to be provided. So I've provided that information for you just to kind of give you a snapshot of what those Clients Assistance Program that Megan asked for compared to DORS.
Thanks, Scott.
Yes.
I'll defer if anyone else wants to speak first, and then I essentially would reiterate the comments I shared in my written comments.
Okay. Thank you.
Right now, we don't have any in the chat, so are there any recommendations for improving DORS?
It would be this particular one.
Just to restate from my written comments, I saw Ellen has them in the chat. Just to restate, Disability Rights Maryland recommends that the Client Assistance Program be redesignated away from DORS. We understand it takes governor redesignation, but our recommendation would be that it be redesignated, since the Client Assistance Program is tasked with investigating the Division of Rehabilitation Services. The Rehabilitation Services Administration recently did a presentation for protection and advocacy staff on Client Assistance Program redesignation, and it was shared that there must be good cause to redesignate a client assistance program, and that being within the state VR agency can constitute good cause. I would additionally add that it's my understanding that the client assistance program did not participate in this commission because of the at least apparent conflict of interest that would present. And it's my position that if there is an apparent conflict of interest with participating in a commission to study DORS, there is certainly a conflict of interest with representing clients against DORS.
Well, I can't make, any comment about who, the composition of the commission. Obviously we have individuals on the commission who are in fact members of the Division of Rehabilitation Services.
Scott, could I also get you to share information about, you and I had this discussion. You have to have calls to remove this, the program. So could you explain that to the commission, please?
Well, I mean,
And there is no just cause at this point?
well, I mean, that's to be determined, what good cause is. Unfortunately, I haven't seen what RSA has put out as far as what they view as, good cause. At this point in time, as far as providing services to the citizens of the state of Maryland, I think the information shows that the CAP program is providing those services. And so they, within the division, operate independently of my office. They don't report to me.
Rachel has a comment. I would recommend that the cap be removed from DORS. I agree with Megan, and they are charged with investigating and charged with resolving disagreements, appeals, and court actions. Jade, I would recommend DORS develop a means of supporting innovation and elevating opportunities for change across partners on an ongoing basis. I believe the inherent conflict of interest is good cause to move the cap. That last one was from Rachel.
Scott, and could I ask who determines good cause, and has that been determined for DORS?
If I could jump in here, as I shared earlier, I participated
Scott,
in a
could I get
session
you
with
to
RSA.
Answer that, please.
And
whenever she
RSA
finishes.
said that being within the Division of Rehabilitation Services has been found to be good cause. I also have information from their presentation. So the redesignation process and timelines, by recommending redesignation, we would be recommending it to the governor. Prior to redesignation, the governor will provide written notice of the proposed redesignation to the designated agency, the current CAP, the State Rehab Council, and the State Independent Living Council. He will provide the federal requirements of the CAP, the goals and functions of the CAP, the name of the current designated agency, description of the current CAP and how it's administered, reason for proposing the redesignation, including the governor's belief that good cause exists, the effective date of the proposed redesignation, the name of the agency the governor proposes to administer the CAP, and description of the system that the new agency would administer. Then, written notice of proposed redesignation is published on the VR and CAP websites. There's and on the state press release webpage, in newspapers, and upon consideration can be sent in an email blast to stakeholders throughout the state. The designated agency must be given the written notice of proposed redesignation at least 30 days prior to the governor's written decision to redesignate. In writing, the designated agency and public, including SRC and State Independent Living Council, have 30 days to respond to the governor. There are also public hearings concerning the proposed redesignation. These activities can run simultaneous to the 30-day notice of redesignation. They must be in an accessible format. The governor shall maintain a public record of them and shall fully consider public comments before issuing a written decision to redesignate. If, after complying with the above notices, the governor decides to redesignate the designated agency, the governor shall provide the designated agency a written decision to redesignate, which should include the rationale for the redesignation. The designated agency has 15 days from the receipt of the decision to file a formal appeal.
I do understand that that may be the process and the procedure for redesignation. I'll go back to my question to Scott. Has there been anything provided or evidence provided that there should be a redesignation?
Not at this time.
Okay.
And based on the information I just shared, it is my understanding that that is for the governor to decide, not the division. And my recommendation would remain, as was indicated in my written comments, that I recommend the governor consider redesignation. As a member of the commission, I make that recommendation.
Okay, and we will vote on that. I would just like to say that, you know, if there is not an issue that we have been made aware of at this time, I have a hard time seeing why the commission should consider a redesignation. But Scott, I would like to call for a vote, please. Oh, somebody else wants to say something.
The discussion before there's a vote.
Yes, go ahead, Alan.
Yes.
Bullet number 4 from Disability Rights Maryland under topic 10 addresses some of what Megan is talking about, and what she has shared is information that RSA has found that there is good cause for removal from a VR program because there's a conflict of interest. So we know that, so I mean, I think that there's an inherent conflict of interest if who's paying you, funding you, giving you promotions, making decisions about your career, is the entity that you're also looking into if there's problems for the clients. So I agree with Megan's and Disability Rights Maryland's request that the Client Assistance Program be redesignated and that it be reconfigured in the Protection and Advocacy entity, which is Disability Rights Maryland.
Scott, I would like to reiterate one more time and make sure that I have this information correct, that you have not, as the Assistant State Superintendent of the Division of Rehabilitation Services, received anything from RSA involving why there should be consideration of that removal. Am I correct?
Yeah, RSA has never questioned the fact that the CAP program is currently located in the Division of Rehabilitation Services.
And if that information is indeed out there somewhere, we would have truly liked for that information to have been shared prior to this meeting so that informed decisions could be made. So, Scott.
Megan, I shared several meetings ago, and in fact, again, I believe it was shared in the 2022 sessions, meetings of this commission, that I believe it's 53 of the 57 client assistance programs are with the, are outside of the state government, and that more and more have been moved. And the reason that I asked Scott to look at the moves in the states we've been discussing today, Maine, South Carolina, is because those states recently moved for the good cause of the client assistance program being within the state agency previously, and they were moved out of the state agency. And so this commission, as I said, I've stated that time and time again, because it's been an interest of mine not to move the client assistance program to Disability Rights Maryland necessarily, but to move it out of the state agency that it's tasked with investigating, because I believe it's an inherent conflict of interest, and I believe that other states and their governors have recently made that finding as well. And I, as a commission member, have wanted to consider this topic, and now, having considered it, would like to recommend this to the governor.
And certainly, I just want to say one more thing, Ms. Lemon, and certainly, you know, as a commission member, you can make that recommendation, but I can tell you that all information that we have shared has been factual and actual and not based upon beliefs. We have stated accurate facts, and we have stated on record that Scott has no information about what the information you are sharing right now.
We're going to call for a vote. The recommendation on the floor is that the Client Assistance Program be redesignated to no longer be within DORS. Again, the recommendation on the floor is that the Client Assistance Program be redesignated to no longer be within DORS. Everyone who is for the recommendation that the Client Assistance Program be redesignated to no longer be indoors, please show by raising your hand. Okay, if you can clear the hand raised, please. Thank you for those who did that. For those who are not in agreement with the recommendation that the Client Assistance Program be redesignated to no longer be within DORS, please raise your hand. Okay. Everyone who abstains from this particular recommendation, please raise your hand.
And this is Jade. I just want to state my rationale. I don't feel like the timing is great with a new administration, with significant funding and staffing levels. I feel like there's other things that we have to fix before we can look at moving the client assistance program. The last thing I would want is for that move to occur, and DORS not have the resources, and you know, a new administration, you know, facing some negative publicity and so forth. So I'm abstaining because I feel like, I'm not saying never, but I just feel like this is not the time to be making that move.
Thank you for your clarification, Jade. We have 4 in agreement that CAP should be redesignated, 6 that does not think it should be redesignated, and we have 4 abstentions.
Okay.
So at this time, it has not passed that this recommendation move forward.
Okay. We have some other topics that were recommended, again, working a little bit off of what Megan said, and it is the DRM recommends MOUs with LEAs, similar to the one with DDA. That is, first off, there are existing MOUs with the LEAs. We're just in the process of currently updating those MOUs at this point in time. Megan, if there's something else that I'm missing, can you let me know?
This is Megan, as far as that recommendation. The first I heard about the existing MOUs with the LEAs was today. And having not seen the MOUs, I would still recommend that there be MOUs between DORS and the local education agencies for the purposes of school and psychological documentation to expedite the eligibility process and create more rapid engagement for DORS services. If the current MOUs have that, then the recommendation could be considered upon our official commission report being made, and it'll be found that those MOUs exist. But since I haven't seen the MOUs myself, I still recommend that MOUs be created to cover that if they don't already. And I think as I would tie into this as part of the discussions that we've had today, I would also recommend that consideration be made to the use of blueprint funding for these students, given the, while we're talking MOUs, given the relationship between LEAs, the blueprint funding, college and career readiness, pre-employment transition services. I mean, I think it's just a good topic for those MOUs. Again, understanding that it might already be in there, in which case this is a right to continue that.
Yeah, I don't think we have the authority to redesignate money
On the blueprint.
on the blueprint. That's not within our authority. That's a legislative.
No, I'm not suggesting the money be redesignated. I'm suggesting that the MOUs contain discussion about how these students covered on the blueprint will be served by both the LEAs and DORS. I'm recommending discussions happen, essentially.
We can't entertain that.
Yeah, I'm not a legal expert on the blueprint by any stretch of the imagination. That's obviously something we would have to consult with the Attorney General's office, whether we even have the authority to even include blueprint in this type of MOU. But, I mean, it's a discussion we can certainly have, but as far as the information that you have here, Jody is working on those MOUs, and that information is contained in the current version of the MOUs.
Ellen?
Yeah, so to follow up on what Megan said, I had put in the chat earlier, I would recommend that MSDE DORS explore whether any of the blueprint for Maryland's future funds can be used by DORS for Pillar 3, which is college and career readiness. This could be a recommendation of our commission under topic 10, which asks about other ways to improve DORS programs and services. So I don't know whether it's in the MOU or not, or whether it happens right away, but it's something that if it's included, then the appropriate entity to look at those funds and make those determinations could study that, because it seems to be it's an enormous source of funds, and the whole pillar of career readiness is the mission of DORS. So I think it should be explored, and it follows up on what Megan said about memorandums of understanding. It doesn't have to be included in that, but that's one way that could be.
You know, I would just like to say that no commission will have authority over how blueprint funding is spent, that the expenditures of those funds have been legislated through a commission that worked for several years to make that decision. And so I can say wholeheartedly that that is not an avenue. You heard the superintendent say this morning about blueprint funding and how it is being used. And so that is, and I will go and verify this with Mr. Dayhoff, but I can assure you that that is well beyond our purview.
Can we make a recommendation that DORS conduct outreach to the legislature to help them understand their role in MSDE and potentially for aiding in blueprint implementation?
Jane, I think that's probably something we might be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, the legislature is really the ones who are driving the bus on the blueprint.
Yes.
So nobody has that power. However, I do think that the blueprint highlights some of the misunderstanding about DORS's role within MSDE and so forth. And so, I think that some outreach and education to help create those links, and maybe as they, make changes to the blueprint going forward, that can all be coordinated and so forth, might be at least worth considering as a strategy, because nobody has the power to tell the legislature what to do as it relates to the blueprint except the legislature. So maybe some education is needed.
Okay. I mean, it's again, I hear it, and that's probably some, maybe it comes up as part of budget hearings. Again, I'm not sure how we would sort of operationalize that, other than, the superintendent, as he goes around and meets with the General Assembly, members of the General Assembly, and has discussions about blueprint. That's certainly something that he can potentially consider, but again, not sure.
I think we have to look back too, Scott, on the fact that we have advocated for additional funding through match funding and receiving those funds. But blueprint funds, I think, is, and I will say it again, is legislated and not something within the purview of any commission, to make determinations about how those funds are used.
And I know that, and all I was saying was explore, and it might be that it's in the next legislative session or whatever, that one of the recommendations of the commission be that the appropriate entity in Maryland state government, whether that's the executive branch, the legislative branch, not the judicial, the appropriate entity explore whether those blueprint funds can be used, at least, Pillar 3 basically describes main functions of DORS, and so why isn't part of the blueprint funding going to DORS for Pillar 3?
And Ellen, who do you suggest that entity should be?
I'm okay with leaving it open to say the appropriate entity, which might be the governor's office and the legislature. It might be the superintendent. It might be all three of them.
I go back to my premise, but that, definitely when the superintendent has been adamant, and he has been very transparent in the fact that anything that we agree to, that we follow through on that we just don't say things that we are going to do and not do those things. So, you know, unless you can, or anyone can say, okay, this is who should do it, then I think that he is not okay with leaving things open-ended. So that's why I asked the question, what entity do you suggest?
Megan has called for the vote. She said, I agree with Ellen, and I think that we are within our authority to recommend further investigation, consideration of this matter. We aren't telling anyone how to spend money, just recommending partnerships and discussion about effectiveness. I'd like to have a vote on this, and so we are going to vote. I need the wording for the.
There's really,
Scott, if we could get the wording, please.
yeah, let me try to come up with the wording. Hold on a second.
Outreach. Implementation. Okay.
To help them. Bear with me, folks. My shorthand is not as fast as it used to be.
So again, we'll vote yes, no, and then I'll count the number of people who abstained from voting. So the recommendation is that DORS conduct outreach to the legislature to help with understanding their role in MSDE and potential for aiding in blueprint implementation.
Yeah, I've got a slight variation, just based on some of the word. So, conduct outreach to the appropriate authority to help them understand the potential of use of blueprint funds for DORS.
So is everyone clear on what we are voting on right now before I ask for you to raise your hand?
I feel like my recommendation's a little different than what Scott just stated.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but it's kind of, I'm kind of taking two thoughts here. One was the appropriate authority, the other is specifically the legislature. I mean, I can change it back to legislators. I don't have a problem with that.
No, I don't think that was my issue, but potential for aiding in blueprint implementation is different from sort of authority funding. Like, I feel like what you added was a much stronger action, more along the lines with what Ellen had been saying than what I was saying. I was looking at purely sort of an educational engagement, but I think that Ellen and Megan were talking about something that went beyond sort of education to establishing authority, and that to me is a different level than what I was proposing.
Thanks, Jade. Why don't we'll go ahead and put down your recommendation of that DORS, well, I'll probably say more than DORS, because that recommendation to conduct outreach to the legislature to help them understand their role in MSD and potential for aiding in blueprint implementation.
So everyone in agreement with this recommendation, please show by raising your hand.
Apologies, I think Scott's microphone might have been a little bit up. I don't know, it was harder to hear him that time.
Okay. Oops.
Okay.
Okay, my apologies. The recommendation is that, let's see, to conduct outreach to the legislature to help them understand their role in MSD and the potential in aiding and blueprint implementation.
And their role is
Oh.
DORS role.
For those of you who are, it's in the chat, a couple of steps up, Jade had put it, he's reading directly from there. So everyone in agreement with this recommendation, please raise your hand. And, okay, 5, 6. Okay. And anyone, okay. Trying to make sure. All right, now if you can. No, it's 7. Now if you can, I was gonna ask everyone to delete for the yes. So okay, if everyone can delete their raised hand.
7.
Okay, now, yes, that's what I had. I had 7 yeses. Okay, and if you do not agree or do not think that DORS should conduct outreach to the legislature to help them understand their role in MSD and potential for aiding in blueprint, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. So if your vote is no, please raise your hand. So, no, okay. And everyone who is abstaining from voting? So this recommendation passes. It's 7 yes, 2 no, and 4 people abstained. And again, that recommendation is that DORS conduct outreach to legislature to help them understand their role in MSDE and the potential for aiding in blueprint implementation. We have another comment.
That's the same.
Same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, she just copied.
She just
Okay.
copied. Okay.
Thank you, Jay, for copying and putting it at the end. Okay.
All right. We've got a couple more recommendations on number 10. One is recommendations for a periodic salary study for counselors and the consideration of periodic salary increases to prevent counselor turnover, increases in continuity of quality services. As we discussed today with the superintendent and so forth, we have just concluded a pretty significant salary study. So that pretty much it will be in effect for a number of years before the next salary study can be conducted. So any point after that, everything for staff is really going to be relying on the governor. We can't negotiate separate agreements. That's, you know, that the vocational counselors are a part of the union, and so those type of discussions have to occur within the Department of Budget and Management and whatever union are representing the vocational counselors. So I don't know if anybody's got any comments about that recommendation.
Sorry, this is Megan. I was commenting in the chat. I first had said I wanted to, I didn't think we were done with the last topic. I thought Ellen's recommendations went a little bit further than the one we just voted on, and I thought we were having a second vote on that and wanted to address that before we move on. But just to respond to what you just said, it's my understanding that we can make recommendations for DORS to take action, for the legislature to consider, since our report's going to them, or having made the study, I think we could make recommendations for the governor to take certain actions. So I don't think that we have to hold back from making a recommendation about salary studies if others are in agreement, just because the governor will be the one in charge of conducting those studies. I think if the group is in agreement about that as a method of continuous improvement for DORS, we could still make that recommendation regardless of who it's directed towards. But again, like I said, first I'd like to consider another vote on Ellen's recommendation.
Do we?
Voted on that.
Yes, it's in the chat.
We're looking for it.
I would recommend that MSDE DORS explore whether any of the blueprint for Maryland's future funds can be used by DORS for Pillar 3, which is called College and Career Readiness. This could be a recommendation of our commission under topic 10, where we ask about ways to improve DORS programs and services. And again, this is not us directing how funds are spent. I'm recommending that we explore, that MSDE and DORS explore whether any of the blueprint for Maryland's future funds could be used by DORS for that Pillar 3, which seems to capture the mission of DORS. And it was shocking to me that the answer to my question about whether DORS was getting any of the blueprint funds, because I thought it was clear from the blueprint that DORS should have gotten funds from the blueprint, given at least Pillar 3.
Scott, I would just like to say again and go on record as saying that we cannot dictate how blueprint funds are used, and it has already been stated that blueprint funds cannot be used for DORS, the DORS program.
But it could be changed, even if that's the current structure. I'm asking as a commission member that MSDE and DORS explore whether any of the blueprint funds can go to DORS. That doesn't have to happen. Obviously, it's not going to happen during this legislative session, but it's something for the future. The plan goes over 10 years. So it may not be in the first year, it may not be in the second year, but it certainly makes sense if you read the blueprint that DORS should be involved and should receive funding at some point to promote college and career readiness.
Thank you, Ellen. Megan, was this the recommendation you were referring to as well?
Yes, I agree with Ellen, and would add that I don't think that this is us dictating how blueprint money is spent, that it's us recommending, as Ellen said, further consideration. And I think the legislature has already considered our interim report, which shows that they're listening, and I would fully support Ellen's recommendation.
Okay, so we have another recommendation on the floor that we're going to vote on. We'll do yes, no, and abstain as well. Okay. So the recommendation, and thank you, Jade, for cutting and pasting it so it's on the bottom for you to take a minute and reflect as I read. I would recommend that MSDE DORS explore whether any of the blueprint for Maryland's future funds can be used by DORS for Pillar 3, College and Career Readiness. This could be a recommendation of our commission under our topic 10, which asks what ways to improve DORS programs and services. Everyone in agreement with this recommendation, please show by raising your hand. Anyone not in agreement with the recommendation, please raise your hand. Oh, clear? Everyone clear? Thank you. Everyone not in agreement with MSDE exploring everything in the chat, please raise your hand. And abstaining? Okay, we have 10, oh, it's 2 abstaining, okay. 10 yes, 2 no, and 2 abstentions. So this recommendation passes.
That's the last one. Okay. Well, folks, we're not gonna, time flies when you're having a good discussion. It's now 4 o'clock. I want to thank all of you for your dedication to the commission, your thought-provoking questions, your commentary, and your recommendations. I really do appreciate it. Hopefully, we've done some of the work that you all have recommended over the course, and hopefully we'll continue to be working on these recommendations going forward. So again, thank you very much. I personally appreciate it, and I've enjoyed working with you and getting to know a lot of you.
Thanks. Scott, just one final question. To the extent that we have recommendations that weren't able to be included, I know I had a few, and I know we are out of time. Are we able to have any further discussions via email? Are we able to schedule any additional time, or should I just submit a minority report? I mean, what's the best way to proceed?
We have done everything we could possibly, included extending time, adding meetings, and everything else. Today is the last meeting. We still need time to write the final report, so today is the last meeting.
Thanks. DRM will submit a minority report.
Okay. Thank you. Again, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Everybody have a good remainder of your day.
And I just want to thank Marlo for chairing and taking on all of that additional work. Thank you so much, Marlo. We really appreciate your time and leadership.
Oh, thank you. And that was great. Thank you all for being so diligent in attending the meetings and providing comments. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Ms. Lemon, I definitely want to thank you for your leadership. You have been so patient and so understanding, and it has really been a pleasure for me to work with you.
Thank you.
And I appreciate everything that you did on behalf of this commission. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for your participation. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.